Hello and welcome to the Brandon Macco podcast. I have with me today H.W. Terrance, the author of the novel Thirst, which, as I understand, is related to alcohol and drug abuse. Hey, Terry, and thank you for joining me.
Hey, Brandon, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
So, your book. Well, actually, maybe before we get to your book, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Cabo San Lucas. I'm in my winter residence in Cabo San Lucas.
Okay, and for the international audience, where is that?
It's in Mexico. Sorry, Mexico, the Baja Peninsula.
Thank you. So, sort of like
Mm.
me, you've avoided the cold. I'm in
Correct. Yeah,
Indonesia.
that's
You're
way
in
down here.
Mexico.
Correct. Yeah, they call us snowbirds. We get out of Canada in the winter, so I come down here in the wintertime.
Nice, nice. So I understand your book is an uplifting story through trials and tribulations, perhaps. Um, so what sort of inspired you to write a book? Like what's your story? How did this come to be?
Well, I've had a lot of experience personally with addiction and drug addiction and alcoholism. And so I'm a recovered alcoholic of 31 years of sobriety.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so I spent a lot of time helping new people who are trying to get sober. And so, most of my social life is with people in early recovery.
Mm,
And so I have a passion for it. It's part of how I stay sober as I give back. And
hmm
as being an alcoholic, I was extremely self-centered and
mm,
selfish person. And so part of the recovery process is to give your time and your energy and your love and your wisdom to people who are still searching. And
hmm
so, I do this a lot. And then I just thought, I should just put a book out there that kind of tells the story loosely, um, to kind of get out to a reader who may never have heard of of a way to recover. Maybe they've heard of AA or something like that, but they haven't had the courage to go in and see for themselves what it's all about. And so I thought, well, maybe a book introducing them to the process
hmm
would help people who are considering it to take action.
Well, sometimes
That's really what kind of a precursor to go into meetings.
sometimes it feels so impossible hearing an example story of how someone was able to claw their way out. Um, can give some people sort of a target. Oh, it is possible. Sometimes it's just I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Oh, that person did. Maybe I can do it.
Exactly, and that's why the book is pretty vivid on the struggle and the mistakes and the depths of the depravity that an alcoholic and drug addict can get to is kind of shown in the book, just so no matter where people are, no matter how far down they are, there is always a chance to get better. There's always hope, and
hmm
there is a path that anyone, no matter how sick they are, can get better. And that's really what the message of the book is.
Yeah,
Never give up hope.
isn't that the truth? I work with a lot of chronic pain, and
Mm.
I often have to do some level of cognitive behavioral therapy or self-image, basically mental work, brain work, um, because some people have lost hope. And
Right.
sometimes, so if I sit and the thought of even being possible that they could get better is just impossible to them. And so we do like exercises like I can be someone who someday can imagine a positive future. Like sometimes you have to start really basis. Maybe someday I'll be able to see a positive future or think positively because they're so down in the dumps. But you have to have that optimism and to go forward.
What an
And
interesting, very interesting, Brand. There's quite a correlation there. Yeah, I've never thought of that aspect before, but it absolutely is exactly the same thing, because the alcoholic drug addict are broken. They are in chronic pain, and so you deal with people with physical chronic pain, and it affects them the same way. in that hopelessness that'll never change. It's going to be like this forever. There's no way out. Um, and so that's really a great insight that you had there. That it's really the same. It's the same medicine.
Yeah.
You know that if you can get hope, then you can begin the long road back to recovery. The process can begin. It has to begin with hope and belief that you can get there
Hmm.
somewhere
Well,
different than
I
where you're
even
at.
worked at
Better than.
a, sorry to interrupt, I even worked at a drug rehab facility because people coming off
Mm,
of drugs, were often in pain because they were sleeping on the streets, or they
right,
got on the drugs in the first place, the opioids and such, because of pain in the first place. Because this was
right,
years ago, and of course the drug epidemic in the States of everyone on opioids, and then they cut everyone off.
right.
And actually, I think they've done too much. I think some people actually do need a little bit of opioids here and there, but now the doctors are scared to prescribe them. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so that everything goes to heroin, you know,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and they go to the
exactly.
street drugs. Yeah, so it's an epidemic in our culture and in our country and society for sure. And so, you know, I just like to be part of the solution rather than, you know, I was part of the problem for my younger life. And in my older life, I'd like to, you know, if you can just help one or two people along the way, that's at least doing something positive.
And I am going to jump into, needing help, seeking faith, perhaps. But more so than that, I love that you're saying, I need to give back. I need to serve. There is a new, relatively new aspect of medicine called lifestyle medicine. And there are doctors who are joining this movement in medicine, which I'm very happy with. And one of the pillars is you're supposed to ask patients, okay, like, what do you like doing? Do you do things you like doing? Do you feel that you're making a contribution? Do you feel you're making a difference in the world? Like, how often does a doctor ask those questions?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful.
But
You know, because
yeah, for a drug
it's
addict or something, you need, or even from depression, you need to feel you have purpose. You feel you need to give back. It's so important.
right. Absolutely. You know, and alcoholic drug addicts cannot recover until they grasp that concept that they have to try and find somebody worse off than them to encourage and give some wisdom and some love to. And then they get better by doing that.
Yeah,
And so so wonderful that you know you can because it absolutely is organic. I mean, we're an organic being. So whether it's physical or spiritual or medical, if you know if a patient can find somebody that's suffering worse than them and try to encourage them and help them, they're going to feel better. They're going to get better. Well,
yes.
that's really cool. That's a really cool correlation.
Yeah, and it's established, whether it's depression, whether it's recovering from drug addiction, no matter what it is, when you're working with someone else, when you're helping other people, when you have positive social connections, you get better.
Yes, because you have purpose.
Yeah,
You have a purpose. You
yeah,
know, something greater than just getting more for you. You know,
hmm,
me is a sick place to be. You know, and you know even in pain, you know if somehow you can have compassion for someone who might have also be suffering the same pain you have or worse, and you can cheer them up even if it's just by visiting them or sitting with them, then you know you're sending a message to yourself. I have purpose. I have a reason to get out of bed, and I got to get better so I can keep helping.
hmm,
You know, and I have a faith too that I believe that that's what my higher power wants me to do. You know, and it's for my own benefit, but I also have another benefit is I think I'm serving higher self, higher being, God, if you will, that He wants me to love others and help others, and so I get that feeling of usefulness to Him and others. So it's a double full thing. It's I get to feel like I'm doing God's will and helping and loving, and I get to feel better about myself for doing it.
hmm.
Yeah.
I feel in the years I've been working, I feel that I do sometimes ask, "Are you religious? Well, have you gone to church? Like, have you talked to God?" because
Right.
that can be one of the keys that gets someone out of the cycle of either, well, in your story maybe addiction, or in my case chronic pain, or, which might be tied to addiction. Um, and a lot of people don't realize this about. Did you try Alcoholics Anonymous?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm supposed to stay anonymous at the level of press, radio, and film, so I can't talk about a membership in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
But
Are you
I
familiar with it then?
I'm very familiar with it. Yes,
Okay. So many
very
people in
familiar.
the audience, if you haven't been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you might be surprised to find out that now I think they were experimenting with chapters that don't have this, but there is a religious component to Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, sometimes
It's
that religious component rubs people the wrong way if they're an atheist or
Yeah.
agnostic.
So I know in the program they talk about a spiritual program. So it's not a religion, but it's a spiritual based program where people are encouraged to find a higher power.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
And so that's a central theme of the whole recovery process is if you're not able to find that higher power, that belief in a higher power, it's hard to want to serve it.
Hmm.
It's hard to convince yourself to do good to others if you don't believe there's a higher power that's helping you and that's pleased with you doing that. And so I think I think definitely faith is a big factor in recovery, whether physical or spiritual. But yeah, so I think my book explores that. It explores how does a person who doesn't believe in God um, get forced to look for God. And through the pain and the suffering of the disease of alcoholism, they finally get to the point where they're willing to look at whether there is a God or not. And, there's no saying there's no atheists in foxholes. So when you're facing death,
Hmm.
people are willing to believe.
Hmm.
And so sometimes it takes that chronic pain or impending death or the suffering of alcoholism or drug addiction to get to that bottom where you finally say, okay, my ways failed, help me. If there's something up there, help
Hmm.
me. And that act of surrendering is the beginning of the strength.
Hmm.
That's the beginning of finding power that can overcome the pain. And it's that daily use of a higher power to enter you and take away your difficulties. That's part of the healing process. It's a big part of the healing process.
For sure. I am a fan of helping people, no matter how. It doesn't matter how, as long as it's helping someone.
Right.
If someone gets better with seeing someone with healing crystals, even as a very scientific minded person, go buy a handful of healing crystals. Then, if they help you. Um,
Right.
Now, I don't mean to belittle religion though, or a higher power. And
Right.
it's been part of a successful part of Alcoholics Anonymous for many years. But
Right.
for the audience, I will say that it's been challenged. For example, if you've been forced to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, for example,
Right.
um, there are non-religious options in many states and provinces. If that irks you, that have been accepted because people have made a big fuss about. Or if you aren't getting help, I have sometimes patients, they don't get better until they meet their sixth, seventh mental health counselor.
Right. Right. A lot of people, they don't get sober or clean until they're ready. They go to treatment centers, they go to meetings, they go to everything, but until they're ready to surrender and seek help from that higher power and go back in and apply themselves to the recovery process, then they keep relapsing or they stay in their pain, and so, I think the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous is that there is no religion to it. There is no defined God. It's open to atheists, it's open to agnostics, it's open to Buddhists or Muslims or Christians or Jews. Doesn't matter what no one tells you what to believe, just that you need to find something greater than yourself Some people come in and go, oh, hey, can I believe in the chair as my higher power? And of course you can, but I don't think the chair has more power than you. So it's a poor choice of a deity.
Yeah.
If you're gonna pick a deity, pick one that's powerful, that can really help you.
Yeah, whatever will what key to unlock your ability to get better.
Exactly.
And I will
Exactly.
add as a footnote, because everything you're saying is beautiful. It's to the point. I think it's reaching to the core of the beauty of the Alcoholics Anonymous program, of that aspect, the higher power aspect. I think you're really
Yeah.
selling it well. But I will highlight to people, for some people who've gotten, again, there's always people who relapse in everything, but some people I've seen get better. It's been through, for example, the self image, where it's the higher powers. There's a subconscious in my mind that actually controls what I'm capable of, and it's like a higher power within yourself.
Mm. Well, I believe that your higher
Yeah,
power has to be within and without,
yeah,
but I think for people who don't want to go to AA or don't want to have anything to do with religion, I think just the act of being helpful to others
yeah.
and trying to go about your day with gratitude and
Mm-hmm.
with a heart of service will completely flip you from negative to positive energy. Get from that self-centered vacuum that you always need more from the outside to put in the inside to feel better. You reverse that energy from what can I take from my inside to give out to help, and the reversing of that energy instead of taking, giving is I think a super important key to shifting the energy within
Yeah,
yourself to a positive
yeah. It isn't a
positive.
zero sum game. The more you give, the more you get back.
Right. The better you feel. Yeah. And you're talking about esteem, self-esteem, it goes up as you give.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go up as you get, so I've been quite successful in life. I don't feel more self-esteem getting more money. I feel more self-esteem spending time with somebody and helping them get out of pain
Mm-hmm.
and onto their life, And so, I've lived a long life after my drunken alcoholism life. So I've gotten to see that, you can chase everything and go on in life, but there's nothing greater than being able to help another person.
Now, did you encounter any, because not only helping people but getting help is important. But did you run into sort of the stigma of addiction, health problems? Did that pose a problem, or another hurdle to overcome? I suppose.
Well, and I talk about this in the book in the process of breaking down the ego and breaking down the messaging that, if you're an alcoholic or drug addict, you're a bad person, or it's not a disease. It's just, you're just a poor character, and starting to understand that there is something different physiologically in alcoholics and drug addicts, where they can get addicted to things, and things that might not necessarily be good for them, might make them feel good the first time or the second time or the 100th time, but eventually it's going to take more from them than they're getting from it. And yeah, there's a stigma that nobody wants to deal with those people, especially back in the early 90s when I got sober. But by then, I had done enough publicly. As that's the joke of most alcoholics. They don't want anyone to know, but the whole town knows. The whole town knows because they've been behaving like an alcoholic for,
Mm-hmm.
car crashes, fights, and problems with the police, and all the things that come with alcoholism. So usually it's not a secret to anybody. So, and once you get into recovery, everybody's in the same boat. Everyone's trying to get better. So there's no more judgment. And so there's a community in there that you can feel part of, that you're not less than, you're just the same as. And so much of alcoholism and drug addiction is from lack of connection to other people, feeling isolated in your life, lonely, and unable to be part of. You always feel different than, chronically different. I'm so different that I could never join anything or get better or anything. I'm this rogue person. And I can remember early in my recovery, one of the things that blew my mind was the medical side of things, the clinical information that, oh no, I'm like a textbook of this disease, alcoholism. There's nothing unique about me at all. I mean, there's a huge portion of the population that suffer from this, and it's diagnosable and it's treatable, and so I'm not alone, and
Yeah.
that's the start of the beginning of recovery, to not feel like you're so different than everybody else, that you
In
have a community.
in lifestyle medicine, they divide it into six pillars of treating and managing diseases, and one of them is positive social connections.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
there, and it's even like the doctor is supposed to write a prescription. We need to do this. This is your prescription for the week to help you with. You don't have enough positive social connections.
Right.
It's
It's a
so
huge thing.
important. Yeah.
So important. Yeah. For mental health, I think the act of sitting in a room with other people that are sharing honestly about themselves, it's absolutely transforming. You walk out not feeling alone anymore, and that your problems are not that big, as other people have problems too. I think sometimes when we don't have interaction with other people, our problems start to mount in our minds and get bigger and bigger, and we feel like we're alone carrying this burden of our problems, and nobody else has any problems.
Mm-hmm.
So the sharing, I think maybe in the old days the church used to do that, or big families would do that, but in our day and age, the families are small, there's not a lot of siblings, and church has kind of faded away for most people. So where do they get that fellowship? Where do they get that connection and interchange socially with people of the like-mindedness? So maybe things like this is part of what the new generation does, is you connect through podcasts.
Well, actually,
So
that's one of my questions. Do you feel that so so you recovered in the 90s, but already your story sounds beautiful. You got these positive social connections. You didn't feel alone. You felt part of a group. Which anyone listening, if you feel alone and stuck, well, that sounds really appealing. Maybe it's time to take those steps. Do you feel it's easier, harder, or just different now compared to in the 90s?
I think it's probably, it's always hard for someone who feels alone and isolated and antisocial to connect with people. It's always hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so. Today, I think things are in some sense easier because it's in your phone and you carry it around and you can connect with people. But it also makes it harder to have real connection, because you can get a lot of your social connection through a telephone or through a texting or WhatsApp and all those things. I don't know if that's I think it's okay. I think it's better than nothing, but I don't know if it's as good as gathering physically with people. I'm not an expert on that,
So
so I think you might be able to tell me better.
I don't work in counseling for addiction specifically, but I've read some research about telehealth versus in person, group sessions, telehealth versus in person. And the research just seems to be all over the place. So when I see
Right.
research all over the place, that means that it might depend on who's leading the discussions. It might depend on the group, might depend on whether the participants are young or older.
Yeah. And, my experience is it's a disease of isolation. So, when COVID hit and a lot of meetings were online, I think it was a godsend for them. It saved them. But as COVID ended, people came back to the rooms, because I think it's easy to hide uh, on the social media. It's easy to hide, to just sort of watch and not be involved, and nobody's gonna you can disappear
Mm-hmm.
or reappear, or no one knows if you're really there or not, kind of thing. And I think having some accountability to a group of people who
Mm-hmm.
get to know you and are expecting you to be there and interact with you
Mm-hmm.
before the meeting, after the meeting, it's a whole event where you're a lot more social than sitting on a screen and watching, and maybe participating for a minute, but there's no before or after, so um, I think it's a limited in my opinion, it's a watered down version of an actual meeting a live meeting where you go in and have to be social.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
so hear
it's
that, audience? In person better. Get out there.
yeah,
That's what we recommend.
yeah.
If you can. It's hard.
If you can, yeah. And maybe it's a good place to start is online, and then
Yeah.
as you get braver or
Yeah.
more interested or more, more turned on, more fired up about it, you seek out the live ones.
Yeah. It can be so hard to take those first steps. So someone will purchase my book on chronic pain, and they'll get up the courage after, let's say, a month of sending me an email, and then when I message back, they're like, I didn't expect you to message back. I don't know what I expected.
Right, right.
um,
Right. At
so
least they make that first connection.
yeah, they were, yeah,
Yeah,
they were just terrified of sending this message. And how many people are out there who have maybe an email open and just are too scared to hit the send button to start
right,
the process.
right.
We talked about how both, yeah, everyone already knows you're an alcoholic, perhaps.
Yeah,
um, but also, it can be, you can feel, we've talked about this isolation. And from my point of view, I come from the chronic pain side. A lot of people in chronic pain feel their condition is like just theirs. No one would understand. The doctors don't understand. The doctors sometimes misdiagnose it, or just wave it away. Here's your pain pills, go away. No one understands their
right,
pain. No one understands what they're going through. No one understands how hard it is. Yes, I relapsed again. No one understands how hard it is.
right.
And like, we think someone's in pain is someone in a wheelchair or someone on crutches. Well, that can be true. Someone suffering from post concussion headaches, for example,
Yeah,
they look just like everybody else,
right,
and they feel like no one understands. But there are people
right.
who understand. You have to open connections or help people
Yes.
understand.
You
People
have to
they've,
seek it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a saying is that a lot of times we compare our insides to other people's outsides. So like is what you're mentioning. Everybody
yeah,
looks like everybody else looks healthy and well
yeah,
and especially mental illness. It's like I feel this way, but everyone else doesn't looks like they couldn't relate because they look all like they got it together.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
No
and
one has
no, and everybody's struggling, and everybody has challenges, and everybody has fears and doubts, and
yeah,
that's why I wrote. Another reason I wrote this book is there's so much out there where people they put on social media the perfect picture with the perfect family and the perfect clothes and the perfect vacation and the car and everything's perfect, but that's not real life, and so my book dives into what's happening, what's the honesty about the process,
hmm
what's it really like being a human, what are the thought process, what's really going on, and the struggles and the mistakes and the ugly side of humanness, so it's not just alcoholism and drug addiction. Anyone could probably relate to the book if they are honest about their interior struggles and how to find a way to get hope and get past their own problems and find a faith that works for them on a daily basis.
Now that, I think that beautifully sort of encapsulates everything we've talked about today. Is there any other closing statement you'd like to add?
No, just if anyone's out there listening, I would just encourage you to read Thirst
Okay.
and relate to it, and that it's never too late. It's never too late to change, and this too shall pass. If you put an effort in, even a slight effort in the right direction, a momentum will happen, and the universe will bend to you, and you will get what you want out of life. But you have to move yourself in that direction, and it's not going to come to you. You have to go to it, and but you don't have to. You don't have to be super strong you don't have to have any credentials whatsoever. Just
Mm-hmm.
a willingness to believe, a willingness to have faith, a willingness to have hope, and action towards that. So hopefully, if anyone's suffering, you find a way, call Brandon, and I'm sure he'll help you, or, look up your local 12-step meeting and go to a
Yeah.
meeting.
Perfect. And where can they get this book? Thirst.
Book for sale on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And HW Terrance Thirst.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, Terry.
Thank you, Brandon. I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you very much.
Cheers.